Hello, everybody. Welcome to the National Parents Union Nightly Restorative Check-In, and welcome to School Choice Week. School Choice Week for me is just, I'm really glad that we honor and we celebrate School Choice Week because, I believe and we believe at the National Parents Union that our kids deserve options. Families and kids, children deserve options. And whatever it is that looks like. And so that's what we fight for, a high quality public education full of options for our kids. I am your host, Marisol Rerucha. I am the wife to Daniel. I am the mother to Camerina, Emilia, and Sofia. I am the daughter to Irma Castro and Abraham Quevedo. I am the grandmother to Isabela Luna and Cynthia Iliana. I am the granddaughter to Camerina Rodriguez Castro, Alejandro Castro, Francisco Quevedo, and Carmen Bedoya Quevedo. And it is just with a lot of honor that I introduce myself always in that way. And I want to say hi to my mom and my aunt who are joining us. So I pop their comments there on the screen. It's just always an honor for me to introduce my family in that way, because it's just, again, it's the reminder and the grounding of where I come from, and that this voice that you hear is not just mine. It belongs to all of those who have poured love, challenge, pain, learning, prayers, hope, blessings into me. And I, like all of us, I believe that we're all the prayers of our ancestors, and we also carry the prayers for our future ancestors. So introducing myself in that way, I encourage anybody, if it speaks to you, to introduce yourself in that way, because you're like, we're calling our people with us, those who are still here in this earth, and those who may be in the spiritual world already. But we're calling them, we're claiming them, and they're claiming us. And I love walking into a space, any room, whether it be a virtual room, a physical room, and be able to introduce myself in that way. So, as I mentioned, this is School Choice Week, and we are the National Parents Union. And what we fight for is we fight for a free, high-quality public education for all kids, regardless of how that looks like. If that's a traditional school program, if it's a magnet school, if it's homeschooling, if it's virtual learning, if it's a blended program, if it's at a charter school, and even if it's at a private school, like, we are here to support and we are here to fight for our kids. So, with that, I'm going to just give you a couple of reminders because we have a lot of stuff going on this week, and then we're going to move into our breathing technique. So we got you Pod Navigator coming back. So this is a partnership between the National Parents Union, Ed Navigator, and we have added Columbia Law School's Center for Policy, Education, Research, and Leadership, CPRL. I think I got that right. And they are, so on Thursday evening at I believe it's 4 p.m., might be 5 p.m. Pacific time, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have an hour with them. And they are here to provide parents with, and learning pod leaders with curriculum support, social emotional support, just really phenomenal resources for you. So please register to participate in the We Got You. It will be streamed on Facebook Live, but with the registration, you'll actually be in the room and be able to connect one-on-one with them, with our presenters. So please make sure to register for that. Also, next week, February 4th, it's already going to be February, is our town hall. And so please make sure to register for that. We have a great lineup of speakers who will be with us. So with that, let's move into our breathing technique. So we do 4, 7, 8. Again, we inhale for 4 seconds, we hold for 7, and we release for 8. And we do this 4 times. I will guide us by counting down the time. So your job is to breathe. If for any reason in the breathing, like you get a little bit caught up with either like the release, the exhale, just go back to your regular pattern and join us on the next round. And I encourage you to try this this breathing technique. I encourage you to try it throughout the day. So in the morning when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you're transitioning activities, at any point, if you're feeling stressed, please try this technique. So we'll go ahead and get started. If you could please put your feet flat on the ground. If you'd like to close your eyes, take a regular breath in and out. And Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And with that, I feel ready. I feel focused, and just ready to really enjoy the conversation that we're going to have with our guest tonight. So I'm going to bring on Vincent Slaughter, and let me just move us over. So hello, Vincent.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I am doing super well, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation. So just without further ado, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself. And if you could share anything that you want about yourself and who you are in this world, and you can talk about your family, your work, your passion, the things that you love, anything that you would like to share with us.
Okay. In following in your introduction of yourself today, I would say that I'm Vincent Slaughter. I am the descendant of a line of strong and courageous people on both the Slaughter side and the Edmond side, my maternal side. Um, I would say that I am a husband, a father, uh, an accountant, uh, aspiring writer, uh, music lover, uh, generous friend, and somebody who's still trying to figure it all out and trying to balance all of those things in life. So I am here absorbing the experience of this life and trying to learn lessons and pass those forward. So that's who I am.
That was really beautiful.
Thank you.
Really beautiful. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you. Um, I just, I mean, it was so beautiful because it was so much with your heart. Like you introduced yourself with your heart. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. No problem. No problem. That's who you are. So it's hard to be any other way around you.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to like the thing that just really caught me, and that was you talking about that you're an aspiring writer. So yeah,
Hard to slide that in there.
yeah, please tell me about that and what that means to you.
Well, I mean, I think my passion for words came about just as a young man, as a teenager, maybe even a little bit before that. I always enjoyed the way authors or playwrights or even musicians put words together, and it's something that always fascinated and excited me. And so when I was young, my way of courting a young lady was to write something, write a poem, write some lyrics to a song, uh, write anything that I felt would get across the point I was trying to get across. And so that probably was the initial start of my writing. From there, I started writing like short stories. Always aspired to write a novel, and I probably have pages of notebooks with half started, half finished, incomplete novels in them. Um, and just trying to find that one story that I want to tell to the world. And I think it's something I still have an aspiration. I want a hardcover book on the shelf somewhere with my name on it. And that's one of the things I'm going to do before I leave this world.
So how do you make that leap from
Mm-hmm.
what you consider aspiring to writer?
Mm-hmm.
Because everything that you're talking about, like, since you were, as you said, since you were a young man, like the word has been in you. And so, like, what's that differentiation for you between being a writer and like claiming that space and being an aspiring writer?
Well, I think the biggest thing is as a writer, even for me, I think the difference between an aspiring writer and an actual, not actual writer, because you're still a writer, you just have not shared your voice or your vision with the world. And I think that may be the only separator between someone who is aspiring and someone who is accomplished. And that's really the difference, is having the book on the shelf, or it's 2021 now, having it on the internet.
I took myself off mute because Daniel and Sophia are leaving. So like well, now you can hear but we'll hear the garage door go. It's super loud.
That's fine. You'll hear the dog barking over here.
I cannot hear your puppy. And you forgot to mention that you're also a dog daddy. Yes. We're not leaving this writing. So, okay. So your goal is to have a book written, a hardcover book by Vincent Slaughter before you leave this world. Where are you in the plan of making that happen?
I have the idea. Surprisingly, I have the idea because, over time and just being frustrated, you had so many ideas, so many different things I wanted to write about. And, finally settling down something I felt like would be a good story. And now I feel like I have that. It's just formatting it and putting it in on paper and really making it whole. Also, the big difference for me between an aspiring and an accomplished writer is discipline. And I think for me, that has been the one area that is lacked, where other things have taken priority, where work, family, sometimes just relaxing from all the stress from all the other things, and not putting the discipline in and writing every day. Every writer, accomplished writer you've ever heard of has said you have to write some every day. And that is the one thing that separates those who do it and do it well and those who do not. It seems to me anyway.
Yeah, I get caught up in that a little bit. So there's a couple things. There was this quote, and it was something like, "There's nothing as hard as actually like getting something written. But nothing feels as good as having written."
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so,
even the little things that I've written, the stories that, I was in the blog world for a long time, writing blogs and stories and that nature. And it was so difficult to get just enough to post written. You'd have this great idea, but then actually formatting and putting it down on paper or on the internet, or just getting it formatted to a point of satisfaction. Also, there was a point where you're like, I still want to change this. I want to, tweak something about it. And that part becomes really, really difficult to let go and to get it the way you want it. You hear it and you see it and you feel it, but to find the right vocabulary for it is sometimes difficult. And, that's also one of the reasons why I'm so in love with people who are great writers, in their ability to find the perfect words to say what they want to say and convey that to the audience. So, yeah.
So I got my degree is actually in creative writing. And so I had a lot of courses when I was at the university in writing. And one of my teachers said, like, a writer is never finished. The thing that gets them kind of done is a deadline.
Yeah.
Like, so like, you're never done, because you're right. Like, you go back, there's pieces that I found that I wrote 25 years ago, and I'm like, oh, like I never finished it. I want to work on it. And I heard of something today. Actually, when you mentioned this, I thought of you. Gosh, it sounded so cool. So someone told me that I don't know if it was their roommate or someone's friend, their art, what they do, their practice is art. They're a visual artist. But what they do is they take the artwork that other people never finished and finish it. So like if people have a discarded art piece, or like they're like, like I'm done with this and are getting rid of it, that person, and I haven't seen it, but I love that idea. And like about all of these pieces, all these starts that you haven't finished. Like it just, that was fascinating to me, that you give somebody something that came from you and they could finish it.
Yeah. I mean, that I could see that. That would make a lot of sense. It's funny because my therapist, I talked to him about the writing several times, and one of the things he suggested was to write your own stories, because you know what happens, you know how it's going to play out. So write about the things that you've experienced, the things that you've been through, and that helps you to not only find the words, but like, okay, convey, but you also can finish it because you know where you're going. Even, when you're writing something that's fiction, you have an idea, and, you do your outline, you figure out how you want to, get to the point you want to get to. But sometimes you want to get to this point, but the character doesn't want to go there. And so you're torn between, will the character do these things because I want to get to this, and trying to find a way to get to that thing. So
that is so beautiful, because that's so much like life. Like that's so much like being a parent. But it's also like being in a relationship, right? But because there's like, you can't make people do things they're not going to do. And I love that in the writing world, like your characters, they do take a life of their own, because
for sure.
The gift, right? That's the gift, is putting to written word the essence and the spirit of a character. And I love that. I love that.
Right. When you live with the characters that you want to include in your work, you know who they are, and you know the kind of things that they would do in their reactions to certain things. And that is different from you. Yeah. And so you want to get them to A, B, or C, and they're like, I wouldn't really go that way. And so that is one of the difficult parts about writing. But your correlation to parenting, in that your kid comes to the world with their own set of ideas about things. And yes, you're trying to mold them and shape them in a way you want them to go, but they're not going to go the way that you want them to go. They're going to go the way they're supposed to go. And it's really on you to adjust to the direction that they're going. So it's very similar in that aspect, except for, you can't erase the kid.
No, you cannot. So what, do you have a deadline? Do you have a timeline by when you want to have this book done, or like the draft?
No, when you said that, the deadline is the difference. I was like, that's what I need. I need to set a timeline and say, hey, by so and so date, I'm going to have written this, and that's what I need to do. I need to set a timeline. So I will do that.
Well, and I'm going to be really honest with you. So like the struggle that I feel as a writer, there's a lot of struggle. One is, so like dealing with issues of self-esteem is the issue of like, who am I to even think that anything that I would write, somebody would be interested in reading? And so that kind of thing like can go, like that kind of thing goes through my head, which impedes the process. And then also I think is just like kind of those beliefs that you have about writing, around that you have to be disciplined, or people say you have to write every day, because then like if you carry those beliefs as truths, then you feel like you're not like that. Then it feels like you're not really what it is that in your heart you are. Like it's so almost that balance of like the outside perspective, like what other people say. Like even though like great writers who are phenomenal writers and write every day, like that's their thing and it pours out. But you know what, Vincent? Like I'm a writer. I have a book coming out. It took years to
Right.
and it was like
Yeah.
the struggle that I'm talking about, like this internal struggle, like
Yeah.
I've gone through it in so many phases. And every time something else, like the cover comes out,
Mm.
the first draft of the cover, the second draft of the cover, like there's all this like emotion stuff that comes out. But I really hope that you can do some work with your therapist just around that, like, you know what, be a writer on your terms. Like, not what
Mhm.
people say, like, just because they write every day, like, you might not have the time for that. And you might not have the motivation.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And the funny part when you say that is, a while back, maybe a few years ago, I don't remember exact time, but there was a point in which I put in my biography, like on social media and things like that, writer, and I felt so self conscious about putting that there. And be like, what have you written? What have you? I was waiting for that question. It never came, but I was waiting for that question. Um, and I took it down. I took that off of there
Mhm.
because I just, you know, that almost imposter type syndrome of like, who am I to say that I'm a writer? I haven't written anything that people can read, at this point. Um, so yeah, I definitely have to view things from my own perspective and not worry about the outside world and what the outside world thinks of it in so much. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I just there's all these like self-defeating things that come in, right? Like that I just and if you have the story in you, if you're a warrior of the pen, if you have
Mhm.
that writing star in your in your makeup, you have to do it. And you
Yeah,
got to get that the like crappy thoughts out of it. It's like with anything, like getting all those thoughts about the way that others say it should be for you, like you do it the way you should. But I do think if it's helpful for you, like setting a date and
yeah,
like starting to get that process down, that's really what it took for me to get this book done. Was it was like
mm,
multiple dates, multiple
yeah,
accountability. Like I actually got I had two different accountability partners at two different
mhm,
times in the phase of the
right,
book, in the beginning and one in the end. And then also aside from the dates that I started getting like from the publisher and then the editors and like having to keep up on it. But it was a much longer process than I think it normally would be or should have been, especially because it's not a tremendously long book. It's like I
mhm,
don't know, I haven't seen the final files. I'm gonna guess it's like maybe I don't know 130 pages, maybe. Like it's not it's not really long, but it was
right,
an internal process. It was
yeah,
all my stuff that I had to work
yeah,
through. Like that's what took years was my
yeah, yeah. I
my
mean, yeah, I think that we all struggle with, whatever our internal dialogue is, and that voice that we hear that keeps us from doing things. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Well, and I just think about like because that has shown itself in every single area of my life.
Yeah,
Every single area of my life. And so
yeah.
I'm 40, I'll be 47 years old this year. And at
Um,
47 years old, like continuing to like work on how I feel about myself and the way that I talk to myself and the way like all of that and all of it in all of my different relationships and all of my different roles, like that
mhm.
continuing to like grow and push. And I'm 47.
Okay, I'm 50, so I understand.
Well, and like I don't want to be 50 without having some of this stuff figured out. You know, like I don't I
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's why we do therapy. That's why we talk to professionals, uh,
yes.
because
Okay.
hopefully they can help us.
So I'm gonna hold you to thinking about a date for your like a date of when you want to have your manuscript done.
Okay.
I'm gonna hold you to that and I'll be checking on you about that.
Okay.
Um
Okay.
so one of the other things that I absolutely loved was right at the end of your introduction. You said something, so I didn't get it verbatim, but something like you're trying to just figure it all out and absorbing life and
Yeah.
absorbing lessons and
Yeah.
sharing lessons. Can you talk a little bit more about that? That was so beautifully stated. And I
Well,
would
I think,
love to hear
go
about
ahead.
lessons.
Well, I think one of the things, you know, as I've gotten older and started to really not necessarily figure things out, because like I said, the older I get, the less I know. Um, well, the less I know for sure. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. It's not that I don't know, it's that the less I know for sure, and the less I have very concrete beliefs. I know that the
Hmm.
world affects everyone and everybody brings to the table their own thing. So, you know, as a young person, very idealistic, very narrow minded, very, this is what it's supposed to be. As I've gotten older and experienced life and, um, you know, hit some walls and had some failures, some successes, um, I know that the beauty of life is that you get up the next day,
Yeah.
in that you have to take what you learn from each experience, small or large. You know, it doesn't have to be grand, it doesn't have to be anything huge, but every conversation, every interaction with someone, even the solitude of your being by yourself and the thoughts that come to you happen for a reason. They happen because you are being directed to where you're supposed to be. And so I never would say I know things. I know things. You know, my kid is always like, "Well, you're always right," and I'm like, "No, I'm the first to say I don't know.
Mhm.
I'm the first person to say I don't know. What I do know is where to look for the answer.
Yeah.
I don't have it, but I know if I don't have it, somebody else I know may have it, or there may be a reference I can go to, or there's somewhere online I can look." So what I, I just try to always be learning. That's my goal in life. Like there's no point in time where I'm going to sit back and say I know everything. I mean, obviously, I've learned a lot in my life. I've accomplished things that, you know, as a kid I would have never thought I would have done. But um, you know, I know now that it's just, you know, it's still phase one. You know, there's still so much more to go. And, um, you know, we still got a book to write. We got a book tour to go on. We got things to do.
Yeah.
So, um, you know, so it's just exploring. It's just a day to day push to be better each day. I think, you know, that's what I said. The major lesson that I've learned is just to keep learning, to stop thinking you know, and open your mind and open your, you know, I'm sure we'll get into it, but you know, being a father at 50 for the first time is a whole different realm.
Go into that. How did that happen? Father of
it's,
50 for the first time.
it's a whole different realm. Like, you know, you know, my wife and I, when we were dating, we talked about adoption, and neither one of us had kids. We were both in our, I think I was in my 40s. I don't know if she was in her 40s. I'm not going to age her. She's only
Might have
36
been
now.
funniest.
She's only 36 now, so she couldn't have been in her 40s.
Yeah.
But we talked about adoption, and it's something that we uh, wanted to do because we know that there's a lot of kids out there who need a home and need direction, and just a chance to become whoever they're supposed to be on this earth. And so it's something we started when we first got together and started thinking about before we were ever even married. Um, and we actually started the process while we were still in Georgia. We moved to Los Angeles 4 years ago from Atlanta, and we started there. My wife got a promotion to come to Los Angeles, so we relocated. Um, so we had to stop the process of foster to adopt then. We started again once we got to Los Angeles. Uh, at the time, we were living in a one-bedroom apartment that was cozy for us, but you know, wasn't big enough for a family. And it turned out that you can't walk through the bedroom to get to the bathroom if you're going to do foster care. So that didn't work for him. So we had to start the process again.
And how long
And you
did
know
you
that
do this? So you started the
well,
process in Georgia and you had to stop it, and then you started the
Okay.
process in Los Angeles and it had to stop. So how much time are we talking now that you had been in the
Overall, we're talking 5 total years. So
Okay.
we started in Atlanta 5 years ago. That stopped when we relocated. We came to Los Angeles, started the process again, which is like 9 weeks of classes. You have to get all your paperwork together, all of the background check, all that information. And then we failed the house inspection because of the apartment. That was very traumatic for us. And, it was very disappointing. We had got our hopes up. We were very close to getting a placement, and we were really happy. And so when that didn't happen for us, it took some time. So we took about 1.5 years to heal those wounds, really, and get our mind right about trying again. And so we started again. We had, because of the process changes every year, we had to take the classes over again. We did that. And that was another 9 weeks of classes. We had to do all the paperwork, get all the background checks done, fingerprinted, all the things you would require someone to do if they're going to take a child. So, it's frustrating as a potential parent, but it's understandable because they're giving a life to you. So you need to do all that background information. So we did that. We finally got approved. Once we got approved, we ended up a couple that we were in our support group with who went through the classes with us were interested in this little boy, 9-year-old little boy, 8-year-old little boy, excuse me. And they ended up having different views about adoption. I think the one did not want to go forward with it. The other wanted to, and eventually split them up. But God bless them. We hope that they figure that out. But since they were matched with this little kid, the RFA that we were dealing with decided that my wife and I would be a good couple.
What is an RFA?
Like it's FFA, actually. It's a foster family agency.
Okay.
And basically, because there's so many cases, and that DFACS can't handle them all, certain agencies, third-party agencies, do all the paperwork and get people certified in lieu of
Almost like
having to go through DFACS. Say again?
They're subcontracting, so they're like building
Subcontract, yes.
Like building programs for foster families, providing them support. Got it.
Right. All of that good stuff. And so
certified you.
Yes, they certified us. We had a support group with other families that went through classes with us. The one couple was matched with the boy, didn't work out for them. The FFA decided that my wife and I might be a good match if we were interested. So they called us, and my wife was super excited. So she was like, yes, and more yes. And so she was like, but I'm going to let my husband decide.
She's like, I'll and let's see what he says.
Right. She said, I'm with it, but if he says no, then we won't. So I get to be the bad guy, which is cool. That's fine.
Yeah.
And so our son came with, some challenges. He is type 1 diabetic. He has some developmental delays, and had been in the system for a couple of years prior to that time. But he was so cute. We were like, we'll take him. What can we do? So we got matched with him. We did some visits, maybe over a couple of months. And actually yesterday, February 24th of 2020, was the day he moved in officially to our house. So we're 1 year into our home, and we're foster parents at the moment, but
11 months, because you said February, right?
I did say February. It's January. You're right. See?
11 months.
That's why I need a timetable. 11 months ago.
But wait a second. So 11 months, and we went into the pandemic in March.
Yes, he was here for a week and a half, maybe 2.5 weeks, week and a half, February 24th, yeah, the February short. It was a week and a half. He went to school and then shut down. And yeah, so we've been parenting only through the.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick because you got a welcome to the NPU board. So we didn't talk about that because you are. Thank you, Linia Lemon, or Lemon. Well, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very proud. I'm very excited. Look forward to
this perspective that you bring in as a. So first of all, the life experience that you have, but this whole process, this fostering process, and that choice to be a foster parent and the choice to share your life with the child through the system. It's a perspective, and it's a voice that we need to hear, and it's a voice that's really needed in school systems. Before we get into that, though, so your son has been with you for 11 months. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things that you talked about is one of the things that you know is that you're always learning. So can you share what your key learnings have been, what you've learned from him in the last 11 months? I can imagine it's been a lot, especially with this time in the pandemic.
Yeah, it's been very interesting because, you know, you're not in a situation where you get your natural breaks of you go to work, the kid goes to school, and then you see each other in the evening. We're in a situation where all day long we're together. And so that sped up a lot of the bonding and kind of also made the transition even more intense for him and us as well. So it's a challenging time, you know, because here's a kid who, like I said, has been in the system for a couple of years in different foster homes, coming to a house where the expectation was different. Our expectation was of permanency, and that we're trying to make a lasting bond that will go for the rest of your life versus in a foster home where you know going in it's a temporary situation, and if you don't like it, he has the power to say I want to leave. They have the power to say you can go somewhere else or whatever. Our situation was no matter what it is, we're going to work it out because this is a permanency situation. It's not a situation where it's temporary in any way. So that intensifies some things, but it also gives you a perspective of a long range plan. So when we're having conversations about behavior or tantrums or schoolwork or anything, we're thinking on a long range plan, and this is where you're going to be. So the conversations I have with him now, I talk to him about what kind of person do you want to be when you're older? What kind of, you know, reputation do you want to have? What is your character? Things of that nature. And those are things he's very young, and he's 9 years old now. And so some of those things are above his head and above his level of understanding. But I believe that the expectation has to be that you're going to meet me up here. I'm not going to come down here to meet you. You're going to come up here. And he might not get there, but he's going to get higher than he would have gotten without that. And so that's kind of where we are. It's a challenge because, like I said, 50 and a first-time parent. And so, you know, you hear people say, I'm really set in my ways, even when they're trying to date when they're older, also have kids. So, you know, we're 50, we're by ourselves, we're in a house by ourselves, and all of a sudden we have noise where it's been quiet. You know, there are toys in the living room where there weren't before, you know, and things of that nature. So it's an adjustment, and it's also makes you reflect back on when you were his age and how you would react and how you would respond to certain things and the things you wanted from an adult or parent and the things that you didn't like from your parent. So you have to kind of be mindful of those. You have to think of it both in his terms and on your own terms, and try to figure it out. And that's goes back to my saying of like, I'm still just trying to figure it out, because the funny part is, our experiences are totally different, but I feel him as a mirror to me in so many ways. In that we have some personality things that are very much the same. We're both very stubborn. We both can be quiet and not really expressive. Even though he's probably way more gregarious than I am, he doesn't share his emotions as much, which is the same thing as I do. And so we both need to get better at that. And so he's forcing me to do internal work on myself in many ways. So that's been really the biggest thing, is that he's going to make me a better person, because I have to be a better person in order for him to be the person that he needs to be. He's going to be that person anyway, but the example needs to be there, or at least I feel that I need to be the example, and I need to set the pace for him. He's got to run his own race, but somebody's got to set the pace. And especially for a kid who hasn't had that stability until this point, it's more pressure. Not pressure, because it's a blessing. It's more responsibility.
Well, there is an image that came to me when you were describing, so two things, the expectations of him, right? And I think also what you haven't talked about, but I think is important, is that you are a Black man, a Black father, raising a Black son to become a man. And I think also like really connecting with that beautiful Black boy joy, and what, and like raising him to be a Black man in these United States, right, of America, and this nation. But so like thinking about that, when you describe like the expectation part of I thought about a mural, and how, murals, they're beautiful pieces, but the way that they got made, especially really big ones, is that scaffolding is put up so that the artist can approach every piece by piece. And I'm thinking about also like the support that he's giving you in growing to be a father, is that both are supporting each other in meeting those expectations, right? To build this beautiful mural of who you are and who you will become and continue to be as a father, and who he is going to be as a human being, as a person, and as a man.
Right.
And we have, so Dr. Anjali, she's the one who taught me the 4-7-8 breathing technique, and she hosts this show on Friday. So make sure you tune in on Fridays. And I agree, like your self-reflection, your vulnerability. And again, I think it's so important, that our sons hear this from their fathers.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I don't like to use the word pressure for it, because like I said, it's a blessing. But he's 9 now, and he's going to be tall. He's going to, have some size, and we know what that means in America. And this was a summer of last summer anyway, with a lot of social, activity, a lot of social injustice, and people protesting and demanding justice in the streets. And I tell him all the time, I was like, you're 9, but people aren't going to treat you like a kid much longer. Your childhood is going to be short. I'm trying to protect his childhood, but I also have to get him ready for the world outside of our home. And, for a kid like him, he's almost been in the system to a point where he doesn't really know how to deal with people in a social level yet. And so it's been hard, especially with the pandemic, not being able to get out. That is, the social aspect is something that he desperately needs. And he needs it from kids of a wide swath, a wide group of kids, from, affluent kids to kids who are excelling academically, to kids athletically, to music, to all kinds of things. And so hopefully, as we get closer to the end of this pandemic, he can get that experience. But I want to make sure that I give him a foundation that allows him to have self-confidence as he steps out into that world, because the world will not necessarily love him in return. But also give him the grit and courage to be like, you may not like it, but I like it for me, and I feel like I can do it, and have that confidence. And he's been through so much to this point that is an area that needs building more and more each day. And another area where I'm trying to learn, how do you instill these things? I try to have these conversations. I try to praise as much as possible, and try to build his confidence up. But I also think, you get to an age where your peers have to be really important to building that in you. And that is the one aspect where I definitely want to try to make sure happens as soon as we can get out the house. But
how beautiful that you've had these 11 months together. It's almost been like the combination of the gestational period of pregnancy, and then also of like that staying at home, to really be able to ground your family, to ground the three of you together, like in a very, like you said, I think the word intense is something that I can really, I can imagine to really be true. And I'm wondering, what are the things that your father taught you, or that you learned from your mother and the other male figures in your life, that you've been able to now in turn teach your son? Or are you or are you one of those transformational parents that's having to shift away from, from your own childhood for your child?
It's a combination of both. Because my childhood, I'm old enough that I came up with both parents in the home before all of my friends' parents started being divorced, and everybody was in a single family home. I had both parents in the home. However, my father was very old school in that he was a provider, but he was not as present in the day-to-day raising of his kids. So the interaction between he and I was not as nurturing. I did not get, conversations or talks about, the birds and the bees, or, things of that nature. Our interaction mainly existed around sports, around watching a game, going to a game, or playing some type of game. But any kind of an emotional exchange, I don't think my father ever told me he loved me. So I never experienced that from him. But I was blessed to have some great men in my life. I had uncles, both of my grandfathers, that we spent a lot of time with, especially in the summers, who were my kind of role models and my guides of how to be. But they had their own issues. Nobody is perfect, obviously, and they had their own things. So the lessons I kind of took from them were very old school and very, you have to be tough, you have to be hard, you have to, your word is your bond. You have to, whatever you say you're going to do, you're going to do it. Very old school, traditional values. They worked for the time that they were in to a certain extent. Because, if you look as an adult and you look back on their lives, you say, they didn't work as much as I thought when I was a kid, but for them, it worked. So I went into adulthood with a lot of that in mind. So coming to parenthood at 50, where I'm kind of really set in my ways, and I have not had an opportunity to practice instilling values into a young man or a child in any way. I'm learning because one thing, I talked about talking to my therapist. One thing I have to he told me I have to do is I have to mourn the relationship I had with my father, but I also have to mourn the relationship I thought I was going to have with my son.
Mm.
So, like we talked about, the characters are going to do what they want to do, and kids are going to do what they want to do.
Mhm.
What I thought my relationship with my son was going to be is not what my relationship is. And so, during this pandemic where we had all this time together, it was a process for me to kind of like, okay, at first I'm not angry, but I'm like, this is not what I asked for, God. When I said I wanted a kid, this is not it. I did not want to be yelling at somebody for 4 hours during a Saturday. That's not the life I wanted. And one thing I had to learn to do was accept him for who he is,
Mm-hmm.
and not be like who you're not, and then not worry about who he's not. And so that took a while. That took a while for me. And, it's still taking a while. I'm still getting better and better every day. But one thing I've learned to do that is so different from what my parents and the older men that I knew did was I'm approaching everything from with love and with that long-term viewpoint. The calmer spirit always wins, is the kind of the motto I keep in my mind. The calmer spirit always wins. And so when he's, irate because I
Mm-hmm.
want him to get back in the shower because he wasn't clean the first time, when he wasn't clean or whatever the last time, then, I have to talk to him about it in a term of like, hey, I know you're eager to come out here and watch TV before bed, but in the long term, I need you to do this right the first time so you don't miss more television, because you're going to miss more because you didn't do it right the first time. So hopefully building those muscles that he can become independent. And, we're 11 months in. I got
Body's
a year to
boy
go.
body the way it needs to be clean, because those little boy bodies can be stanky.
We feeling. Hey, I know from firsthand experience, my mom used to be like, what were you outside? I was like, no, I was watching TV. She's like, go get in the shower.
Well,
I don't know what you were doing, but shower.
those are so important because they're things that as he goes into that socialization, that like other kids, like that, you don't want that to be a thing, because they're, because kids are very honest. If something, like you don't want it to be a thing. So it's something that long term, it's more than just about, like the TV. It's like that self-care and really like getting in there and instilling those things that are values in your family.
Right. The values is also the main thing, but the other thing about that, it goes back to the self-confidence,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of that activity is based on, I'm going to miss something if I don't have this, or if I don't do this, then I'm going to miss something, and not being confident enough in yourself that it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, and I'm going to be there when I'm supposed to be there. And, looking back on that, I didn't get that till I was 20 something. So I'm not really super urgent for a 9-year-old to have that just yet. But I that's what goes back to me talking about I'm going to talk to him up here, because even if he can't verbalize it or put it together, or even if it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to him just yet,
Mm-hmm.
it's in there and it's moving around, and it's going to, and somebody else will say something else, and a friend will say something, and a teacher will say, and it'll all connect at some point. It may be, many years down the line, but it will. And so that's just kind of my hope. I believe in speaking, like you said, when you talk about your ancestors when you come in the room, you have to speak light over people. You have to talk to them about who they are going to be and what the greatness they have in them, not what they're doing right now. And I say that, but I struggle. But I struggle. I have my anger moments. I have my
to have that concept that was so beautiful. You speak light over people, and I don't just think it's the speaking; it's the thinking light over people, believing light over people. Like that concept. Imagine if all of us as parents approach parenting, and also like just as human beings, like that we speak light over ourselves, over others. That was so beautiful. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Has your son heard the words "I love you" from you?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah. We definitely say I love you.
So how does that feel, knowing that you have changed a generational pattern?
I mean, I never really even think about it in that way. I know that, it's not something that I heard. I don't know. I really haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. But, I know that what is happening in my home is changing the direction of his life.
Absolutely.
Even, on bad days, even on the worst days that we have, I know that for him, it's new because he hasn't been held accountable. Nobody has said, hey, you're not supposed to do that. That's not okay. Don't do that.
And this is why.
Yeah, and this is why. And this is why, because you don't want to be this person. You want to be a better person than this. And I know that you can be. And I know that you can be.
I wanted to pull this back up because thank you, Anjali, but this wisdom that she dropped, our kids choose us and they teach us. Yeah. And I have always believed that, because, my daughters they're going to be 27, 26, and 16 this year. And I remember before my oldest was born, I remember feeling like her spirit was uniquely coming to me and chose me. And I felt that about Emilia, I felt that about Sophia, and I feel that about our grandbabies. And I agree, like he chose you. He chose you. He chose his life. He chose his biological parents, and he chose the parents that are choosing to love him so much that they're willing to do not just the generational work, but the human work of the now. Right. And at 50 years old, it is so beautiful, Vincent. So we only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to hear from you. So I'm just really glad that you've chosen to become a part of the National Parents Union. Can you just talk about in a couple, we have a couple minutes, but what is your hope? Because you're an accountant, you're a foster dad, you're a writer who will have a book published. But I don't know if the idea of you having being on a national platform was something that you were woo, that's my thing. So what can you talk about your heart for the work?
For the work, you're speaking specifically about parenting. That work.
For the national and being on the board.
Right. I think, I've talked about it a little bit here, but I think one of the things that I've encountered, having dealt with both the foster care system and the school system so far, it goes back to my thing about expectation. I think that one of the things that I had a conversation with somebody the other day, and they said in military schools, there's no gap between the white students and the black students on their achievement, because their expectation is the uniform across the board. And when I see my son, who's in the 4th grade, get presents from school that I would deem for 1st and 2nd graders, or things like that, and I'm like, what's going on here? Why are you not demanding more? Because they're more resilient, they're smarter, they're better than what you think they are. And
This.
that is the most important thing.
So
Is just to
you're ready to fight that fight for our kids, is what you're saying.
yeah, for sure.
Level of expectation, and you bringing your expertise. That and you know what, Vincent, that's what it is. Like this is how systems are transformed. It's from people seeing something in their life and in their way, and I think that's impacting their children or someone they love, and saying like, no, like all of this system has to do better for all of our kids. So before we go, one more comment, somebody really appreciating Mr. Russell Coronado, the conversation. And so welcome to NPU. I know that we'll be seeing more of you, and I appreciate you gave me so many gifts today. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you for being with us.
I appreciate it. You know, it's always love. So,
always.
Anytime.
Always. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. What a beautiful, beautiful conversation. I will be back with you on Wednesday, so please join me. And don't forget Fridays with Dr. Anjali. Have a beautiful night, everybody. Please know that you are loved and you are cared for always. Good night.
Good night.